Conceived of by Hideo Kojima and developed/published by Konami originally for home computers in 1994 and in 1995 for the Panasonic 3DO and in 1996 for the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn was that of Policenauts. The premise of the game had it that it took place in the then year 2013 as the United States police officer Jonathan Ingram from the Los Angeles Police Department was one of a handful of officers who had received special astronaut-based training to protect Beyond Coast, the first self-sustaining space colony created by the human race. During a test of a new type of spacesuit, an accident causes Jonathan to drift out into space and was presumed dead by his colleagues, but one of the features from the suit saved his life as it automatically put him into a cryogenic stasis until he could be safely rescued and revived. In the time that Jonathan was frozen, the outpost of Beyond Coast had developed into the main location for eventual interplanetary travel, and the importance of this site is protected by a police force called the Beyond Coast Police Department. Attempting to rebuild his life in the year of 2040, Jonathan has become a private investigator on Earth in old Los Angeles. One day he's visited by his former wife Lorraine, who remarried after he was assumed to be dead. It's a bittersweet encounter as she asks for his help with locating her new husband Kenzo. Aside from a few clues that were found, Kenzo has all but completely disappeared. Jonathan is neutral about taking the case as Lorraine decides to leave his office. While leaving, she's murdered. Unable to catch the person responsible, Jonathan decides to honor Lorraine's final request and travels to Beyond Coast in search of Kenzo. Along the way, he's reunited with his former Los Angeles partner Ed Brown, who in the 25 years since Jonathan's disappearance has become the vice president of the Beyond Coast Police Department. Ed helps the search for Kenzo's disappearance by having officers Meryl Silverberg and Dave Forrest put onto the case. During the investigation, Jonathan receives information from Karen, Lorraine's daughter, with Kenzo that he was stressed and frustrated with his job at Tokugawa Pharmaceuticals, which were developing drugs and treatments, as well as medical solutions, with health-related problems as a result of living in space for prolonged periods of time. Jonathan and Ed also encounter former officers Gates Becker and Joseph Tokugawa, at which Jonathan suspects of being involved. Jonathan receives further information from a former co-worker of Kenzo's who was eventually killed, and Kenzo himself is later found dead, but Jonathan is framed for the murders. Both Gates and Joseph were actually the ones behind the accident that caused Jonathan to lose 25 years of his life. The motive being an illegal drug and organ tracking operation connected to Tokugawa Pharmaceuticals. As with help from Ed and Meryl, Jonathan attacks the Tokugawa headquarters and actually kills Lorraine's murderer and confronts Gates about everything. Jonathan tricks Gates into revealing everything through a live video broadcast, and the entire affair is exposed to all of the citizens of Beyond Coast. Ed later saves Jonathan by killing Gates while Meryl and the other police handle Joseph and the others at the Tokugawa facility. The game later ends with Jonathan learning that Karen is actually his daughter with Lorraine and has him returning to Earth. Hideo Kojima devised the concept for Policenauts while working on Snatcher, as due to the limitations of the gaming technology at the time, he had to simplify the plot of Snatcher, and as a result, leftover ideas, in part, became what was later known as Policenauts. Critics and gamers of the time highly praised the work for the in-depth story on unique characters depicted in the game. Policenauts as well as Snatcher were pivotal influences for Hideo Kojima when he released Metal Gear Solid in 1998 for the Sony PlayStation, in which actually featured Meryl Silverberg, which the Policenauts version is actually the original concept for the character later depicted in the Metal Gear Solid video games. Critics have also compared the character appearances of Jonathan Ingram and Ed Brown to Martin Riggs, played by Mel Gibson, and Roger Murtaugh, played by Danny Glover, from the original Lethal Weapon franchise, as the first film was released in 1987, as this was well within the time period that Hideo Kojima was conceiving Policenauts with the excess ideas from Snatcher, as it's now known that Hideo Kojima was also influenced by Lethal Weapon to various extents. Despite claims for Policenauts to be possibly remastered or even remade, all of the likenesses of the characters as well as the game lie with Konami, and even though the premise for the game was entirely Hideo Kojima's, he left Konami under auspicious circumstances. Sometimes a character could be forgotten because leftover ideas from one game created another, and both of them were revolutionary.